Hey kids, and welcome to another episode of Learn BMX Racing. I am now at one of my favorite tracks. This is Antelope Valley. And if you're brand new to BMX, you may be wondering, well, how did you find the track, right? How do you find tracks that are closest to you? Well, most of that involves being on the computer. So let's jump over to that and I'll show you the whole process. Man, I wish I'd done that a little quicker or slower so I could have had the gate start. The first thing that I want to mention is that if you're watching this video, make sure that you are watching it on a desktop or on a television screen or something really big like that. Okay, don't watch it on a phone, don't watch it on a tablet, because everything is going to just be too darn small for you to see it and to understand what you need to do. So let's say, for example, you are new to BMX and you want to find the racetracks that are near you. Well, what you're probably going to do is come here to the USA BMX website, right? And you're going to click on Tracks, and you're going to go to Find a Track. And this is the way that most people will do it. So you kind of scroll down, and you see a map of the United States. Okay, and let's say, all right, I am in California. I want to find the tracks out here. And if I click on California, you can see it gives a list of all the California tracks. But I still don't know exactly where they're at, right? It's like, it's not really user-friendly, right? There's got to be a better way to do this. What would be really cool is if you had a map that just showed every single track, right? And then that way you could figure out how close that track is to your house. Well, that is exactly what I have done. You can come to Learn BMX Racing, and you click over here on BMX Racetracks, and then you can click on Map of United States BMX Tracks. And that will show you every single track in the country. There you go. So it's pretty cool. And the way that this map works is something that I'd like to sort of review with everybody, because I have discovered over the years that even people who are very computer savvy don't necessarily know all the little tips and tricks that you can do to use maps like this. So you can obviously zoom in right here, and you can zoom out using these plus and minus buttons. But you can also use the scroll wheel on your mouse. So if you roll the thing up, it zooms in, and if you roll it down, it zooms back out. So that's kind of a cool feature that a lot of people don't know about. And if you left-click the mouse button and then drag the map, you can move it around. So just knowing those two things are very helpful to navigating around one of these maps. Now, another thing that you can do here is you can click on this little icon up in the upper left, and that will pop out this menu, which will give you all of the tracks in alphabetical order. So as you can see right here, it says 334 more, and if I click that, that brings up this list of every single track alphabetically, okay? And I can also zoom in on any one of these tracks by clicking on the name that appears here in the list, okay? So if I say double click on that, or just single click actually, it highlights that track, okay, and then it shows it up here all by itself. And then I can get back to that main list by clicking on that back button, and it takes me back here. And then if I click this arrow, that recompresses the map, okay? So another thing that is very useful about this is the satellite view. So what is the satellite view? Okay, so let's say, for example, this regular map right here is just an illustration, right? Like you'd have in a good old Rand McNally book. And this is great to find directions, to realize, okay, this highway is here, that highway's there, and you can figure out how to get to a place. But let's say you want a little bit more detail, right? Let's zoom in on this track right here, which is Whittier Narrows. Now we can tell from looking at this map that it's obviously located within some sort of a park, right? Because we've got all this green in here. But we don't really know anything beyond that. Now, if I come down here into the lower left and I click this little picture icon, it will change the map from an illustration to a photographic rendering of satellite images. Now if I zoom in the rest of the way, it's really great because, oh look, I can actually see the BMX track. I can see there's a parking lot right here. I can see there's a parking lot right there. And then I can also see the street that I would take to get there. So the satellite view is extremely useful for figuring out all those kind of details about where you need to park and all that sort of thing. But that's not all. There's one more thing that I need to show you about this map, and that is how to make it a little bit bigger. Well, actually, no, there's two more things. There's two more things I got to show you. Okay, but the next thing I'll show you is how to make it bigger. So this is kind of small, right? It's embedded inside the Learn BMX Racing site, and it's a little bit difficult to navigate. Maybe you want to see a little bit more. So if you come up here where it says View Larger Map and you click that, that will pop up a new window where the whole American BMX tracks list is in its own window, and now it's very big and very easy to navigate. Okay, so let's say, for example, you want to figure out what's the closest track to where you live. Okay, and we'll zoom in here a little bit more. And let's say you live in Burbank. Okay, you're living in Burbank, California, and just by looking at the map now, you can instantly tell where the closest tracks are, right? You've got this one up here, you got this one right here, this one, and then you have these two, right? And there's Burbank. So, which one is the closest? Well, it looks like it's probably this, which is Whittier Narrows. If I click on that, you can see, yep, it's Whittier Narrows. If I go back, click on that one's Bellflower. Come out here, that one's Sycamore, which is unfortunately closed. And if I click on this, that's Freedom Park. And if I click on this, that is Antelope Valley. Okay. So how do I get directions to any of these to find out what the actual distance is? Well, all you got to do is click on that track, and then you see this little icon appears right here. That will give you directions. So if I click on that, it again opens up a new tab, and right here it gives the address of the track, and then all I have to do is put in my location. So I put in Burbank, B-U-R, and then it starts to pop up Burbank, so I can just click that and wait a few moments, and it will actually map out multiple routes to get there. So the shortest route looks like it'll take about 34 minutes, and it's 21 miles away. So there you go. So I've shown you how to use the map on this page, but if you scroll down a little bit, there's a whole lot of extra data down here that I provide. You can see right here where I've highlighted map downloads. Here are a bunch of different file types that you can download which contain all of this data, and you can use it in any way that you desire. So for example, you might want to just download a plain text file, which you can see right here. And this is just a comma delimited text file which contains the name of the track and the global latitude and longitude coordinates of where that track is located. There's also an XML file that you can download, which is this one right here. And you can see there's a name node for each of the tracks and a node giving the coordinates of those tracks. There's also a Microsoft Excel version. So you can have that file, and this one is just a spreadsheet of all of that data, right? You have the names, the latitude and longitude, so you can sort of manipulate this data in whatever way you desire and use it in any kind of software that you need. Another thing I provide is these files. Here's a POI file for TomTom, and here is a CSV file that's been formatted for Garmin's. So these are GPS devices. So you might have like a handheld GPS or a GPS that you have in your car, and you can actually upload this data to your GPS so that you will have all of that in there. Now another file type that's really cool is this one, the KML file, because you can use that right in here in Google Earth. So if you've never used Google Earth, it's pretty cool. It's a neat piece of software. It's this 3D kind of rendering of the Earth. And let's take a look at what we can do with that KML file in Google Earth. So I double click on that, and you can see now out here in Hawaii the 2 tracks are highlighted, and here's all these different tracks that are now listed across the United States. So it's a lot like the map that I showed you earlier, right? And if I open up this little arrow, again, I can see all of the tracks in alphabetical order, right? So let's scroll down here, and we will take a look at a track like Hesperia. And if I double click on that, you'll see that it zooms in on the map to that track. And there we go. So the one thing that's really neat about this is that you can also get kind of a 3D view of things. So if I zoom in just a little bit, again using the scroll button on my mouse, and now if I click and hold the mouse button, I can drag all around just like I can with the other map. But if I hold down the Shift key first, then I click and drag, whoa, look at that! Now all of a sudden I have a 3D rendering of things. You can see the buildings here are now in 3 dimensions. The track itself is in 3 dimensions. You can see the sort of contours of the berms. You can see that the light poles are being rendered. You can see the trees. So this gives you an even better idea if you're trying to figure out, well, let's see, where can I park when I go to the track and that sort of thing. It's really neat. It's not just a cool feature, it's also got some practical use behind it. And you can really zoom in tight and kind of look around with features like this. So that's a pretty neat thing that you can do in Google Earth. If you want to be able to see all the tracks again, you can come up here and just click on that, and it again shows you everything. Now note that that 3-dimensional view is not available on every single track, okay? It's just certain things in Google Earth have that feature. So for example, if I come to Antelope Valley, which is another very cool track out in California, and I try that same thing, you'll see this is a little bit weird, right? Like it's not the same. The light poles aren't 3-dimensional. Everything is still flat. Even all the trees and stuff are still flat. So I just wanted to point that out in case you try to use it and it doesn't look 3-dimensional and you think that you've done something wrong. You probably haven't. It's just that not all the tracks are going to have that kind of a feature. I believe that Whittier Narrows is also 3D. Yeah, this one is also in 3 dimensions, and you can see all the trees are in 3D. You can tell that that berm right there is in 3D. So kind of a neat feature. And you can also use Google Earth to map out directions, just like you can with the other maps. And doing that, you can, let's say, come in here, and let's say I want the directions from Glendale to Whittier Narrows. I can right-click on Glendale, say directions from here, and then go to Whittier Narrows and say directions to here. And after a little bit of calculating, it shows the blue line and it gives you all the turn directions right down here of which way to go. And it also gives you different alternatives. So you can take this route, which is 29 minutes and 17 miles. You can take this route, which is 19.6 miles, and you can see that the map changed. And you can take this route, a little bit longer. By the way, I hope that it's obvious in any of these pieces of mapping software. I keep using the city as a starting point, but I'm just doing that as an example. You can put in your actual house address instead of just the city. So let's say, for example, I want to get out to Apple Valley, right? I click on the directions. I worked at Disney for many years, which is at 500 Buena Vista Street in Burbank. So let's say I wanted to hit the track after work and I want exact directions from there. and I can put in the exact address that I'm at, and here you can see, again, it gives me multiple routes to choose from. So maybe that's obvious. Maybe you guys figured that out on your own, but I just wanted to point it out that, yeah, you don't have to map from a city. You can actually put in your actual address in order to figure out the directions.
But wait, that's not all. In a world of 3D BMX tracks, one man travels through time to Yucaipa BMX.
I'm sorry, I gotta lighten the mood here. I know, this is ridiculous, right? A 20-minute video on how to use maps and stuff. But look, this is important because if you don't know all these details, then you might miss a really cool BMX track. So, next thing I want to go over is, I wasn't kidding, this really is a time travel feature of Google Earth. So if we look at Yucaipa BMX right here, we can see, okay, wait, what's going on? Like, there's no track, right? Well, the thing about Google Earth is not only do they have satellite images of the Earth, but they have satellite images that go back in time. So, the image that you see as the default, right, this isn't necessarily the newest image. All right, so how do you go back in time with Google Earth? Well, right up here, you see this little icon with the little clock and the arrow on it, and if you mouse over it, it says show historical imagery, okay? And then down here, you'll also see a thing, click to see historical imagery from 1995, okay? And then you notice the latitude and longitude down here in the lower right, okay, which obviously is changing depending upon where the cursor is located. Right here, you will see the date appear when I click on either this or this. So let's activate it from down here. We'll go back to 1995, and now you see this little slider appears, right? And here we have an old 1995 image of the exact same location. And as you can see, there isn't even a road here, right? And on this slider, you can see these little hash marks. So those little hash marks represent a different moment in time. So this timeline is going from 95 to 2018. And then down here, we can see the image date. So this is from October 1st of 95. So let's slide this on up to, let's say, 2005, right? And you'll notice, like, sometimes this image is like really blurry. It's kind of weird. It's like the quality of the satellite images is not consistent. So sometimes older images will look really funky, sometimes newer ones will. It all depends upon the resolution of the satellite at the time. So let's move up a little bit further. We can come up to, say, 2011, and now we can see that there's a road, but there's still no track, right? But let's come all the way up to the latest stuff. Let's come up to December of 2018, and there you go. Ta-da! There's the track. Hooray! Okay, so this is really important, right? You need to use this slider because, like I said, the default doesn't always show the most recent image, okay? Now, if we use the slider and go back to right here, right? This is February of 2016. And kind of looks like they're just building the track, right? And then let's go back a little bit further, 2014, and you can see, there you go, no track. So Yucaipa was probably built sometime in 2015 or 2016, and we can see that by checking out the images of the satellites. So, speaking of time travel and all of these tracks and the timeline, I can assure you that all 300-some tracks in this list definitely existed at this exact location at some point in time, because I personally went through and double-checked and made sure that all of these markers are in the right spot, okay? The other thing I want to point out is that a lot of these tracks are listed as closed. Well, don't necessarily assume that that's accurate either. Now, I'm not lying to you. I'm not deliberately telling you, I'm going to tell them it's closed when it's really not. No, it's not that. It's just that these tracks are always in flux, okay? Sometimes a track is open for 40 years and then it shuts down. Sometimes a track is open for 2 or 3 years, then it closes, then it reopens. You never know. So that's actually what happened with Sycamore. They were open for 40 years. They shut down last year, and they're trying really hard to reopen that track. X Roads, right? Crossroads out here in the desert is another track that shut down, and now I heard very recently that they're going to try to reopen it for 2020. Hesperia is a track that was opened back in the 70s and 80s, then they closed down, and now, thankfully, they're reopened, and it's a really great track. So always check, make sure that you find out whether or not that track is open or closed, and don't assume that just because it says closed in this list, don't just give up on it, because maybe somebody has come along and reopened that track. One last thing. There's one more thing I want to show you. I'm sure you might already know about this one. You're familiar with the Street View in Google Earth. It's also available in Google Maps. So if we come over here, you see this little icon where it says drag to enter Street View. There's this little yellow dude who's standing on this green circle. Okay. So if I click on this and drag it to the map, you will see all these little blue lines suddenly appear in the roads, right? You see the blue lines down here, and there's blue lines up here, right? Now, if I release the mouse button, it will zoom in to a street view. Pretty cool, huh? But, as you can see, the street view is also not necessarily up to date, right? And unlike the map, you can't go back in time on the street view. In fact, if you look up here, you can see it's ghosted out, right? But if you look down here, it does say imagery date 3/12. So we know this is from, March of 2012. And we just proved that the track didn't exist at Yucaipa until about 2016. So that's why there's nothing here, right? But it's still really useful to use Street View because you can kind of tell what an area looks like, And here, I'll give you a good example. Let's exit the Street View. So we come back into our satellite image. And then let's go back to good old Whittier Narrows, okay? So let's say you're looking at Whittier Narrows and you go, okay, well, I'm trying to figure out where to park. I can see there's a parking lot here and there's the parking lot here. So let's go to the Street View and drag this over. You can see again the blue line appeared, right? So if I let go, it will zoom in for us. And there we are. Now we can see exactly what the parking lots look like, which is great. So if you're coming to some unfamiliar track, you can go, oh, okay, I get an idea now of where I need to park and what it's going to look like before you even get there, right? And obviously the way that you navigate this is I'm just clicking and dragging the mouse, right? So I can rotate around, I can look up, I can look down, and I can actually move down the street by just clicking on the road itself. If I click there, it zooms forward, and if I click there, it zooms forward again, and then you can kind of see the track from this side. You can see the loading gates, and you can see the sign for Whittier Narrows. So Street View is incredibly useful as well, and something that I highly recommend when you're searching for a nearby track.
So thank you so much for watching this episode of Learn BMX Racing. I hope that you found it informative and useful. And remember, kids, your good old days are happening right now.